So hi, welcome to another conversation. I'm here again with my friend Andrew, and today we're going to be talking about, well, guns.
Okay, hold on. I wasn't prepared for this because
Oh,
I thought we were at a different subject. So I had something prepared here. I was going to say
oh,
you can find them in any country in the world. They come in a variety of shapes and sizes and are built for a range of purposes.
mhm.
Uh, they're a cause of frequent controversy surrounding public safety, regulation, licensing. Despite stringent government oversight and enforcement, they frequently cause death and bodily harm through accidents, reckless misuse, suicides, and deliberate acts of violence. They've been employed in numerous acts of terrorism in recent years, killing innocent people on the street. Some people say the world would be better without them. Others would like to see a world where no household goes without one.
Hmm.
Every day, thousands pour off of assembly lines and into the hands of civilians and governments alike. I thought we were talking about automobiles today. I'm
Oh, well,
terribly sorry. I'm not
the
prepared.
the mistake could be made for sure. And yes, the automobile is a very dangerous contraption. I had several near-death experiences in the very recent past regarding
You know what?
automobiles.
I see people get hurt with them every week.
Hmm.
A scourge.
Yes, I expect the life of a paramedic. You do see the what is really dangerous in the world more often than most people would, for sure.
It is winter.
Yes, and
And then,
actually
of course,
tomorrow.
summer rolls around and it gets worse.
Well, of course, yes, because all the people who like their automotive toys will be out and about and doing their thing.
Yeah.
And tomorrow, actually, I'm driving to the Greater Toronto area to take a friend to an appointment, and I'm not really looking forward to it because the
Yeah.
403, the QEW, is a terrifying place to be, and folks just kind of get in their cars and just go.
Yeah, I'd really like to see the government step up to the plate and implement some limitations on things like racing style vehicles to cut down on things like speeding.
Sure, yeah, because that's definitely going to work because that's definitely worked
Prohibition
before.
always works. Yeah,
Yes,
like
yes.
we solved the drug problem.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Nobody
All
does
right.
drugs because, well, you throw people in cages whenever they do a drug, and therefore they just never do it again. And
Yeah, they just stopped
yeah,
because you got rid of the
that's
reason they were doing it.
that's how that works. Yeah, for sure.
And you got rid of the profit incentive for the people making and supplying.
Oh, even better. That's just great. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm actually coming around on this issue. I used to be in favor of stringent gun control, and basically was of the mind that nearly nobody needed a legal firearm, and for that matter,
Hmm.
there are certain types of guns that, well, I still kind of see the value in control, but I do
Yeah.
now recognize and acknowledge that there is no sense to be made for the kind of gun control that is often proposed in these matters, and maybe we
Yeah.
could elaborate a little bit on that. Where,
Yeah, unfortunately, guns are like a political football a lot
Mhm.
of the time, right? Where they're like we have a lot of emotion-driven discourse, and like most firearm owners are okay with most kinds of regulations. They just want them that make sense.
Yeah,
Like you're okay with most of your vehicular regulations.
hmm,
We're okay with things like building code, right?
yep, yep,
Fire safety plans and constructing buildings, right? Firearms, similar thing,
yeah.
right? So uh, we're coming to you from the great country of Canada here, eh? And our gun laws here are complex.
Yeah, yeah.
It's actually it's a little easier to understand than United States gun laws because while they do have the Amendment, firearms regulations there are different state to state. So
Yeah.
there's a whole patchwork of different restrictions and regulations and hoops you got to jump through. So there's a bunch of states where you can just go buy a handgun and that's just it. You're an adult. You can have a handgun. You can tuck it into your belt and you can just walk around with it. And then there's areas like California where if you want an AR-15, you need to chop off a whole bunch of parts and turn it into Frankenstein.
Hmm.
Uh, and it still works the same. You just have to deliberately make it look stupid.
Right,
Um,
right.
because again, sometimes people making gun laws don't understand what they're doing. So you either don't get the desired result, or the results are Kafkaesque,
Yeah.
right? So here in Canada, um, three classes of firearm, you could say: non-restricted, restricted, and prohibited. Very few people possess prohibited weapons. They're things that get grandfathered in. So if you have like an antique pistol, typically you have a permit to own it, and then when you die, like you can't pass it on to your kids. they got to turn it into the police and it gets destroyed.
Right.
I think most license holders in Canada, they have something called a possession and acquisition license. It gets you access to non-restricted firearms. So to get a PAL, you need to take a 2-day firearm safety course. All right. So you got a certified instructor, and they take you through how to safely handle and store firearms. All
Very
right.
important.
So yeah. So and it's not like a shooting course. It's not. There's no live ammunition involved. You're not at a gun range or anything. It is straight up just here's how to handle it. Here's how to ensure that it's not loaded. Here's how to load it properly. Here's how to ensure that it's in good working order, because if you have a firearm that is in a state of disrepair, it can explode in your hands.
That would be bad.
Yeah. So like it's safe. It's basic safety stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like
This is the
don't
shooty
point it
end.
at
Don't
anything.
point this at something that you don't want to
Yeah.
die, and
If you
etc.
don't want a hole in it, don't point a gun at it, right?
Makes
So
sense.
always assume it's loaded. Always have like good control of it, right? You don't like walk around with one finger through the trigger guard and carry it around like that, right? It's
Yeah, no.
you hold it firmly, you point it in a safe direction. You always assume it's loaded, and you don't point it at anything you're not planning to fire at, right? You keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to fire. They go over safe storage, right? So to store a firearm, the bare minimum is you either need to have it locked away somewhere or you need to render it inoperable.
Right.
All right. So, and most people do both, right? Like my guns typically sit in a safe with either a trigger lock on them or like the action removed. So I got a couple long guns here beside me, and for the safety people here, they haven't left my sight since I checked them, ensured that the chamber was empty, no live ammunition, feed path is clear. Okay. But for a bolt action rifle, you take the action out. It doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
There's a trigger on this and a metal tube.
Yeah.
All the things that make it go bang are in here. So when I store it, this is in a separate spot from the gun.
Makes perfect sense.
So should someone defeat my safety procedures, be it a home invader or someone trying to burglarize my house, they can't just put their hands on a firearm and it's good to go. And obviously it's also unloaded and all that stuff too.
Lots of layers of protection, not just one thing
protecting
exactly, you,
like
lots of ways.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. All safety comes in layers, just like in a car. You have an airbag, you have a steering wheel, you have anti-lock brakes, and you have safe driving. Right. No one of those things protects you. They all provide a layer of protection.
Yeah. And all these things would have to go wrong in order for something to actually go wrong.
Yeah. And if something does go wrong, they're all there to mitigate risk. Right. So if I am having a brain fart and I squeeze the trigger on a weapon that I'm not intending to fire, well, the fact that it's not loaded is another layer of safety there, right?
Yep.
So after you take a safety course, you got to pass a both hands-on and written test. Written test is mostly knowledge of the laws regarding your responsibilities as a firearm owner, and hands-on, show me that you can safely handle this. So you got dummy ammunition, show me that you can load this, unload it, handle it in a safe way. You're not being reckless. You're keeping the muzzle in a good direction. You have good control over it. Then you take your paperwork that says that you've passed the exam, and you send off a lengthy application to the RCMP. And you have to include references, people who have known you for more than 3 years. If you are in a relationship, they will talk to your spouse or partner. If you've recently been like divorced or something, they're going to talk to your ex and they're going to be like, hey,
is this guy cool?
Does he have a temper? Has he been threatening you?
Right.
So they're going to talk to people who know you, and they're going to be looking for things like, yeah, he's been walking around muttering, and then they'll all be sorry a lot lately, but otherwise he's a cool guy, right?
Right.
They look out for that stuff, right? Yeah. And then it takes, right now there's a backlog. It takes like 6 months to get your PAL, right? So there's no just deciding I want a gun and then getting one that week, right?
Yeah. And it's usually those spur of the moment purchases of weaponry that are the dangerous ones.
Yeah, right. The things we do when we're drunk, right? So having like waiting periods like that and having like the scrutiny is very effective in reducing like gun crime and incidents with like legal firearm owners.
Yeah.
because like someone who's up to no good is probably not going to go through that process or is going to get caught up in that process. Like the RCMP is going to know if you've been committing crimes.
Right, right.
They do a criminal record check on PAL holders every day,
Yep, yep.
every single day. If you want an RPAL for restricted firearms, there's an additional day of safety training for handling handguns, and all handguns in Canada are either restricted or prohibited.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a handful of restricted rifles,
Right,
long guns.
right.
So again, safe handling and all that. Um, there's also a lot more legal responsibilities and requirements for safe storage of restricted stuff. So for my long guns, the bare minimum is like either lock it up or disable it. Don't put it somewhere obvious, like just sitting in a window.
Mm-hmm.
Or restricted stuff, you need to have a lock that is disabling the firearm, and it's got to be locked in something.
Mm.
If you wanted like display it, like you're putting it in a gun rack behind glass or something, it needs to be like double secure to the house, like a pair of eye bolts through a stud, and then pass a wire lock through it. So you
Wow.
can't just like unscrew an eye bolt or something, right?
Right, right.
Additionally, if you like to buy a handgun,
Yep.
once I have an RPAL, I go to a gun shop. I select the firearm that I would like.
Mm-hmm.
I pay for it, and I take a receipt. And then I call the RCMP from home and I ask for an ATT, authorization to transfer.
Oh, okay.
I tell them where I live, where I'm buying the gun from, and which gun range I belong to, because they're going to have questions if I don't belong to a gun club, but I'm buying pistols.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to wait upwards of a month or two to get that piece of paperwork from the RCMP that says I'm allowed to move a handgun.
Mm-hmm.
Once I get it, I can go to the gun store, pick up my handgun, lock my handgun, put it in a locked case, put it in my vehicle, drive straight home without any detours or stops or leaving it unattended, because my ATT does not authorize me to leave it in a car while I'm grocery shopping.
Which seems very reasonable, yeah.
Yeah. It gets home, it gets put in a safe. It is still disabled when it's in that safe. And then if I want to take it somewhere, it's wherever that ATT specifies. So if I've got a malfunction, if it's damaged, if I need some work done on it, I need an ATT to take it to a gunsmith.
Like
I need permission to move it.
Unless the bureaucrats know specifically where you are, what you're doing
Yeah.
with it, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
100%, right? So yeah, and that ATT comes with it. So if I'm going to the gun club and I get pulled over by a cop and he says, "Where are you going?" and I say, "Oh, I'm going to the gun range." If I got restricted stuff and he has to see my ATT, I better have it with me.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
these are mostly anti-theft measures.
Yeah.
Right? These are
Yeah,
stringent measures to make sure that, because like you know that if you don't have something like that, then you're going to buy a handgun, or someone, not you, Eric, but
not me.
someone
Definitely not me.
is going to buy a handgun, put it in their glove box,
Yeah.
nip into the store for a couple smokes, and then suddenly their car gets broken into.
Yeah.
Oh, what terrible timing.
Oh dear.
And they report that their handgun's missing.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Now
So
it's out in circulation.
yeah, exactly. It's a measure to stop people from sneaking firearms off of the government books. Right? So that's all going to hell in a handbasket.
Right. So
the political football's been punted.
So this is what I hear, that there is now a move to effectively completely ban handguns in particular regions. So what's all this about?
So starting last spring, the Liberals started rolling out a series of new firearm regulations. What they did last spring was something called an order in council. Think of it similar to an executive order in the American system, where they have taken pre-existing regulations and amended them in a way that a lot of people aren't comfortable with, because they're essentially bypassing parliamentary debate. It wasn't like written into a bill, discussed in committee, and then voted on. It was just kind of agreed upon by the majority party, and then changes were made. So the changes that were made are restrictions on both non-restricted and restricted firearms. And I should make a note on those before we go forward. A non-restricted firearm is something that I can like hunt with. All right. So a non-restricted firearm is like a bolt action rifle, some semi-automatic rifles. Yeah, small game rifles, most shotguns. a few semi-automatic long guns. And yeah, it's stuff that you can, if you own a farm and you got a gravel pit at the back, you're good to just go back there and set up some targets and shoot if you want. They're typically hunting weapons or plinking weapons. Restricted stuff, you're only allowed to shoot it at the range.
Right.
Whether it's a handgun or a long gun, like there's no hunting with your AR-15. There's
I don't.
yeah, but and that's the thing. Like they're mostly like sporting rifles.
Yeah.
Like an AR-15 is not something I would want to hunt with. I've never owned an AR-15.
Yeah.
It's good at a lot of things, but it's not good at the things I want to do.
Right.
So I don't own one.
Yeah.
All right, but generally, most models you're only firing that at the range, and you're either just target shooting or you're doing like competition shooting. So the Liberals banned about 1,500 guns. They moved them from either non-restricted or restricted to just prohibited.
Okay.
With a grace period.
So what would qualify a gun before these regulation changes? Like what would qualify a gun as being prohibited entirely?
Most of the regulations are made by the RCMP, or they're essentially recommendations made by the RCMP. Like part of the nitty gritty of this is there's a whole bunch of different like makes and models of like AR-15. The patents expired on it, and tons of manufacturers make a variety of them. And one of the things that makes them popular is like they're modular. You can buy a receiver from one company and then you can build your own. You can buy a barrel at a weight and length and diameter that you want. You can buy optics and hardware and trigger and stock and build it up exactly how you want. So part of the reason that the list of banned firearms is so long is that they banned most AR platform rifles, and they had to list like all the iterations. It's like if you want to ban the Honda Civic and the Honda Civic's XRT and the Honda Civic's Deluxe and it's like a vehicle model, right? They've got a whole bunch of variations on that year's model, right? A whole bunch of stuff got caught up in the ban that like the whole thing is not great policy, but there was also a whole bunch of stuff that is just dumb. So they made a move to ban things that are like anti-material rifles, because you used to be able to buy like a high power 50 caliber rifle that you can hit a target with it a kilometer away if you're a good shot, and it'll punch a hole through a steel plate.
Wow.
And it's wildly impractical for committing a crime. Like realistically speaking, just build a pipe bomb if you want to destroy something, right? Like it's not concealable. It weighs 40 pounds. It's 6 feet long. Like you're not getting away with anything if you try to mess around with an anti-material rifle.
Useful in war, useful in certain specific circumstances.
And that's what they're for, right? They are used in warfare for like, oh, we don't want this guy to get away in that Humvee. So right before we make a move to snatch him, we're going to shoot the engine of his vehicle and destroy it. Or, hey, the hijackers have a plane. They want it to take off and fly somewhere. We're just going to shoot one of the engines and it's not taking off. And now they can't bargain. They can't use that as a bargaining chip, right?
Right.
That's what those rifles are for. And some people like fucking around with them. Some people like, they like going to the range and just,
fun.
Some people like a really fast motorcycle.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
But like, it is actually so hard to get up to trouble with something like that for so many reasons.
Yeah.
But they banned stuff like that. And then the way they banned it was they prohibited things that generate too much muzzle energy. So a projectile coming out the muzzle with more than like 10,000 joules of energy or foot-pounds of energy got banned. So they could just encompass any like new things that get manufactured, new cartridges, anything like that. But then the RCMP looked at all the new regulations and they went, oh, a whole bunch of hunting cartridges fall in that.
Oh.
So like 460 Weatherby Magnum, which is like a bear hunting round.
Right.
So again, not something you're going to shoot up a school with, because you fire one round of 460 Weatherby Magnum, and once you've put your shoulder back in its socket, you go and field dress your bear, right? Like it's not, there's no accurate follow-up shots with that. There's no semi-automatic weapons that are handling that kind of stuff.
And it's overkill for, like, if someone were to be trying to commit crimes and or kill people, it would be complete overkill. There'd be no point in using a weapon that large when a handgun or something.
It's not concealable. It's not practical, right? And it's like if you're working like up north like north of the Arctic Circle, where there's polar bears and you're at like a work camp or something, it's some dude's job to sit around with a powerful rifle like that in case a polar bear mauls you and it
Right.
needs to be taken down in one shot.
Right.
But a whole bunch of those weapons got accidentally caught up. They also banned weapons with bore diameter over a certain width, and accidentally encompassed 12 gauge shotguns, the most
Which are
common
very
gauge.
common. Yeah. Great.
Because there's a taper at the end for changing out chokes.
Mhm.
So in a shotgun or in modern shotguns, you can change the very end of the barrel's diameter for different shot patterns.
Mhm.
So you can have it just parallel with the rest of the bore
Mhm.
for a wide open shot pattern, or if you're turkey hunting, you use a super full choke that really crunches that pattern in because you're trying to shoot a very dense cloud of pellets at a small turkey's head,
Mhm.
right? So yeah, they accidentally lumped in like 10 and 12 gauge shotguns and then had to like amend what they said. So they called it an assault weapons ban or an assault style weapons ban, and
That's not an
none
assault
of the
weapon.
weapons that got none of the weapons that got banned are called assault weapons by the people who manufacture them.
Right. Right.
And they said, well, they fit a kind of appearance or category that we perceive, whether or not the manufacturers call them assault weapons. And then they accidentally banned the shotguns. And they went, well, no, because like the manufacturers say that these are hunting arms, and they're obviously hunting arms. And it's just like, okay, so which is it?
Yeah, but
Is it a modern sporting rifle or an assault weapon? Is it a anti-material rifle or is it a 12 gauge pump?
right. Right.
Right. So total inconsistency there. They banned stuff like I had a Ruger Mini 14, so non-restricted semi-automatic rifle.
Mhm.
Holds 5 rounds. You're limited to 5 rounds of semi-fire ammunition or center-fire ammunition in semi-automatic weapons.
Mhm.
And I bought it because it wasn't an AR-15. I
Right.
bought it. I was like, okay, it doesn't look like the bad gun.
Right.
It's not black. It's got a wood stock. The technology is like World War II era Garand action. I was like, I bought it
It's
as like if somebody asks me to deal with the coyotes that are killing their chickens, great gun,
yeah.
right?
Sure. Sure.
A lot of fun to a lot of fun to shoot,
Yeah.
right? And yeah, it got banned because it got used in a mass shooting in the 80s.
Right.
Because obviously the problem was that guy had a gun. If he had just
Right.
made a pipe bomb
Yeah. If only.
or stabbed some women at bus stops at night, the problem would have been solved,
Right.
right?
Right. Right. So let's
It's
ban knives. Let's
it's
ban
silly.
all
So
those other
there's a
things.
2-year grace period on that. So come next May, if I haven't forfeited my Mini 14 to the police for whatever sum of money they've decided it's worth, I paid about $1,200 for it. I'm sure I'm going to get about 400.
Hmm.
I will become a federal criminal.
Oh boy.
Yeah,
Just like
just
that.
like that.
Yeah. Even though you
Yeah.
have
So
not a violent bone in your body, even though you're
yeah,
not. Yeah. Great. Just
yeah.
just for
Right.
possessing
So
this
it's
thing.
just yeah. Right. So all this time I had no idea I was a mass killer, and of course, while they're talking about this in Parliament, Justin Trudeau is saying that the only reason that you have an AR-15 is to kill as many people as quick as possible. It's what it's made for. And then I'm watching news footage of RCMP goons with AR-15s dragging Indigenous elders off of pipeline blockades. And I'm like, whoa,
Hmm.
whoa, 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 hold on.
Oh.
I thought we weren't killing these people. Why do you have AR-15s?
Yes. Yes. There's
Do
a
as
bit
I
of a
say, not
hypocrisy
as I
there.
do.
The
Yeah.
the state needs its monopoly on violence
The,
and
the,
on
the
assault
state is a
weapons.
monopoly on violence.
Yeah.
That's what makes a state,
Yes,
right?
indeed.
So do as I say, not as I do.
Right. Right.
And I mean, it's just not an accurate representation of what an AR-15 is for. Like we
Right.
can go into the weeds of military history
Hmm.
and why that weapon is prolific and is used by modern militaries and became popular with the civilian market, and it's not for killing lots of people fast. So yeah, the liberals are rolling out another wave of actual legislation this time, not just an executive order. They don't have the political capital to just outright ban handguns. They can't get the votes. Like
Right.
obviously the conservatives are going to vote against that stuff.
Yeah.
I hate every time I agree with Aaron O'Toole. It kills a little bit of me, but unfortunately he's on a run this week. Yeah, they don't have the political capital to just do a nationwide ban on handguns,
Hmm.
so they want to give municipalities the ability to do municipal bans. So
Right, right.
you're not allowed to transport it through here, buy it here, store it here, whatever, right?
Mm.
Because then the gangs won't have handguns. That's how that works, right? You
Right,
say,
because there's
yo,
there's certainly no
yeah,
non-legal ways of getting handguns. There's certainly
yeah,
not a
and
nation south of our border that has crap loads of them just floating around without any registration. Yeah,
yeah,
no.
yeah. And once we make it illegal to kill people, then the gangs are really going to suffer.
Oh, well, in that case, now that they know it's not legal to kill people,
Yeah.
well, everything will
So
change.
yeah, so we're looking at more bad policy. We're
Hmm.
looking at more over policing of underprivileged and majority POC communities
Hmm.
to make white liberals feel better in large urban centers.
Right.
Um, we are looking at more polarization of our political climate because, like, the difference between attitudes on guns in rural environments and urban environments are in stark contrast.
Hmm.
Very
Hmm.
different lifestyles. More people are
Yep.
very much more accustomed and more comfortable with firearms.
Hmm.
And when you do shit like this, you're reinforcing the idea that urbanites have no fucking idea what they're doing.
Right, right.
And in this case, they're right. So we're not addressing urban poverty. We're not addressing the reasons kids might want to get involved in gangs.
Hmm.
We're not addressing toxic masculinity that drives a lot of the mass shootings in the States. We're not
Hmm.
addressing right wing conspiracy theories. We're not discussing the QAnon cult. We are criminalizing sport shooters
Right,
who are
right.
statistically less likely to
Targeting the
be
wrong
committing
people.
gun crimes to begin with.
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah, and
again,
that
it's another case of instead of building a better world, let's
yeah.
just penalize people.
That's really the core of the issue here is like rather than having to address the symptoms of the problem, which is to say the weaponry that's being used in when there is a breakdown, we ought to be really looking at why it is that these problems happen, why it is that people shoot people.
Yeah.
Like if we look at the mass shooting problem in the United States and quite often in schools, like it's not the guns that cause the mass shootings. It's
And that's the
that
thing.
there's all these young men that are alienated and isolated and driven mad by basically the awful situation that is the United States.
And
Like
inundated in a cultural myth that glorifies violence. The,
right,
the
right.
the Colt Single Action Army winning the West, the M1 Garand defeating
Hmm.
the Nazis, the
Yeah.
musket taking down King George's dastardly armies, commodity fetishism that
Oh,
goes
oh
along with guns.
yes.
That's just
Yes, of
appalling,
course.
right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of gun owners are so tickled pink that the NRA is filing for bankruptcy because it's a garbage organization
Yeah.
that scares boomers into getting donations
Yeah.
to subsidize the money they get from firearms manufacturers to act as a lobbying and advertising wing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there is so much batshit lunacy that makes me go, how do you think this is advancing your cause
Yeah.
by doing shit like this? And
Yeah.
it's commodity fetishism. The
Yeah.
same way they try to sell you a car or a house or clothing or entertainment. They're trying to target parts of the population who are either afraid or feel like their
Mhm.
masculinity is threatened, and they're like, "Yo, small dick, I got something for that."
Yeah, they're
And
selling a lifestyle,
yeah,
selling
exactly.
relief
That's what
from.
advertising is, right? They
Yeah.
don't fucking sell you on the specs of a vehicle. Nobody understands the engine specs of their fucking SUV.
Yeah.
The advertisement is driving through an old redwood forest on the coast with a kayak on the top of your car, going down to the beach where the only person there, and heading off into the surf because you're an adventurous, sporty kind of person.
You want this lifestyle. You
They're
want this
selling
feeling
you
of security and
lifestyles and
safety
ideas. Yeah.
and
And so
utility
yeah,
and
like a big part of the problem in the
Mhm.
States is to go, hey, are you a big fucking pussy, but you want everyone to think you're a tough man? Get a gun. And
Yeah.
I don't know, a
It's
big thing in the firearms community is a whole bunch of people who don't know what they're doing, who just buy a bunch of guns,
mhm.
don't know how to handle them, don't train with them, think that it makes them some dirty, hairy, macho, tough guy.
Mhm.
And again, it's a problem for me as someone who is not an idiot with a gun because it makes me look bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of this comes down to narrative, and I've focused a lot on narrative lately on this channel. That when one of the prime narratives of America is this rugged individual, this righteously aggrieved solo hero that saves the day by showing up with a bunch of guns and getting vengeance for the
Yeah.
wrongs done against them. Like, is it any
If
wonder that
only
people are
if
playing that
only
out?
John McClane and Wyatt Earp would show up and
Yeah,
deal with
that'll
this.
solve all our problems.
Yeah, so they're selling you the fantasy that you're the lone gunslinger who's
Mhm.
going to
You're the
rescue this
hero.
convenience store from the dude who's holding it up for $20
Yeah,
and turn this insured theft into a shootout,
yeah, yeah.
right? And this like and the narratives of like you got to have guns at schools in case there's a school shooting,
Mhm.
so that when the police show up and you've downed the shooter, they can shoot you because you're just a bunch of civilians carrying firearms, and a scared shitless cop who's never used a sidearm before is just going to see you and mag dump on you.
Yep, that makes sense. Which is to say that it doesn't make sense. Well, and there's an argument to be made here, like just to play devil's advocate, that if we take the template of like nuclear non-proliferation and we
Mhm.
apply that then to less serious guns, if we want less chance of nuclear war, then we should probably have less nuclear weapons laying around and less
Mhm.
proliferation of nuclear tensions. And so, can't we apply the same logic then to guns, just like handguns or weaponry that could be used against people?
Yeah, and I'm definitely of the mindset that like I don't want like open and concealed carry of handguns
Mm-hmm.
in Canada.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm sufficiently safer on the streets of Toronto if someone around me has a sidearm tucked in their belt
Yeah. No.
and there's a shooting, because that's just one more scared person in a crowd who's liable to make a mistake
Hmm.
or add to the mayhem, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't like that idea.
In the few
You
cases that I've been in the United States and just kind of like out on the street, I am very aware, I find, that there are probably people in this crowd that could end my life without even thinking about it at any given moment.
and
And
we're sure they're all very mentally stable
oh,
and
sure.
of even temper. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and
definitely.
and most mass shooters, like, let's be real, they kill themselves.
Yeah.
They're not stopped by a good guy with a gun. The cops surround the building, and before they even get inside, like most school shootings are murder
Yeah.
suicides.
Yeah.
We're not saving the day with John McClane. We're saving the day by reaching out to alienated youth and not teaching them these narratives that kind of glorify violence
Hmm.
and making people respect you through force.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's just like, again, having a healthier culture, creating a less toxic environment for people. When stuff
But
like this
that,
happens, people blame the gun. It's just like, dude, like,
yeah.
you're not solving. Like, there was anecdote recently here in town. Somebody committed suicide with like a common household product. Like, they bought it off Amazon. I'm not going to tell people what it is, but they bought it off Amazon and they ate tablespoons of it until it poisoned all their hemoglobin and they died.
Oof.
And I was speaking to the paramedic crew that attended and one of the police officers that was there. And the cop was like, yeah, I was talking to the kid's mom. And she was like, yeah, he's tried this before. And like, he orders his stuff off Amazon. And I just kind of intercepted it. And she like opened her trunk and there was like 4 boxes from Amazon back there. And it's just like, dude, you are
Why,
waiting to like the
why didn't you
last possible
do something?
opportunity to intervene here.
Holy
So
crap.
the idea of like, hey, we can prevent violence by getting rid of the gun, it's just like, he's gonna find something else.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
just,
There
like,
will always
he's
be
gonna
another
drive.
implement of
They're
destruction.
gonna drive a car through the crowd, or they're gonna
Hmm.
make a pipe bomb, which is
Hmm.
really freaking easy, or they're gonna stab someone, or they're gonna
Hmm.
do something.
Hmm.
But like, you really need to address why they're doing this, right?
Yes,
Like,
yes.
Britain has a really bad knife crime problem right now,
Hmm.
where like in the greater London area, they're having an epidemic of like stabbings and people getting cut, and a lot of the 18 to 24 male demographic are walking around with knives, which is illegal, but that
Hmm.
doesn't stop them.
Of course.
Surprise, surprise,
Hmm.
right? And I was watching a BBC special where a reporter was showing you all of the knives you can buy off of Amazon. You can just, any kid with a credit card can just go on Amazon and buy, and it's like, it's this.
Yeah,
It's a folding
yeah.
knife, like
Which
like get a
you're
Canadian Tire.
You're
And I'm
not
like, you
really
are
gonna.
missing, yeah, you are not addressing the reason
Yeah.
that all of these youth are carrying knives and getting into bar brawls and cutting each other. You just think that you can just get rid of a kitchen utensil and you will not have any more violence. So I look at that and I look at the discussion on gun control and I'm like, am I going crazy?
Yeah.
Am I losing my mind?
Ah,
I'm like, that kid's going to shoot up a school. You don't give him access to a gun. Oh my God, what else is he going to do? He's going to fucking like set fire to something? Is he going to bar a door
right.
and set a building on
Could
fire?
this get worse or
That
better
could be
or
worse, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Like, I'm like, so we're just not going to talk about the kid who was planning to kill people
right,
because
right.
now he doesn't have a gun. Like
And there
that
are
fixes
there are
everything.
interventions that could be made here,
Yeah.
but the problem is also that the more illegal you make a thing, as we know with drugs, the less able we are to make interventions because
You push it into
people
the shadows.
necessarily have to do it secretly. So if you're seeing somebody that's like in the Canadian case, this is, as I see it, a much better model where if you see somebody looking to get a gun when they're interviewed, when they're surveilled in order to ascertain whether or not they're a good gun owner. If you discover that hey, something's wrong here, this gives you the opportunity to intervene in psychological ways, in terms of life course, in terms of like economic issues, that sort of thing, assuming we have the willingness and resources to be able to actually do something about such things. But
And the RCMP interviews that they do before you get a license, they're not just like a be all end all. Like, no, you're cut off. You don't get a gun. So like if you got a history of mental illness or you got depression, we're cutting you off. Like it means you just get additional screening.
right,
Okay, you've been grappling with depression. We want you to like talk to someone about that and get the all clear from them,
right,
right?
right.
So like I mean, I think we've talked about this before, but sometimes depression is just a normal part of life because when shitty things happen, your brain doesn't like
It
it,
sucks. I don't
right?
feel
Yeah,
good all the time.
so having like a death of a loved one,
Hmm.
it doesn't necessarily preclude you from owning firearms. It
Yeah,
just means like, hey, we're going to keep an eye on you because you're having a bad time,
yeah.
but that bad time will probably pass, right?
Now, that being said, somebody who struggles with like breaks from reality, psychotic episodes, that sort of thing, maybe we want to at least restrict that until such
Yeah,
time as that situation is under control in some way.
and sometimes when that happens, yeah, they will move your guns on you
Hmm.
and hold them until such time that you're fit to have them again. And that's another reason that like community is important
Hmm. Yes.
because I know that I've got friends who like if I am not myself,
Hmm.
if I am way off of my normal behavior, if I am like talking really dark shit
Hmm.
or they're worried about me harming myself or someone else, they will take the keys to my gun safes.
Hmm.
Right? They'll be like, "Hey, buddy, tell you what, you're having like a really rough time. Throw me the keys to your safes.
Hmm.
I'll keep them somewhere safe for you. And when you're good again, I'll get them back to you."
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got friends who will do that for me,
Having good
and I
friends,
would do
having
it for
good
my friends.
having the support of people who are willing to look at you as a whole person rather than a series of numbers or a series of
Yeah,
pathologies like a bureaucracy might. It
yeah.
makes a big
A funny
difference.
story. Funny story. Back when I first got my PAL, I got it with the missus. We took the safety course together. We applied around the same time,
Hmm.
and about 6 weeks after I sent my application off to the RCMP, my parents got a call from the RCMP
Hmm.
to interview them,
Hmm.
uh, and I got a call just so they could chat with me, and it was all pretty mundane questions, nothing out of the ordinary. I was pretty young. I've never been in trouble with the law, so it was all pretty run of the mill stuff. And about a month later, my PAL came in the mail.
Hmm.
Around this time, the missus was like, I sent mine off like a week after you, and I haven't heard anything.
Hmm.
And then her pal came in the mail.
Oh, well, there it is.
Because statistically speaking, she's not going to do anything.
Yeah, no, no. She's pretty harmless, all things considered.
Yeah, statistically speaking, if she's going to hurt someone, she's going to poison me when I'm 50.
You better be watching out. So why don't we look at then, like, what use is a gun? Why might someone want to have a gun, whether it be a long gun or a handgun or some sort of assault rifle, some sort of a hobbyist rifle? Why would somebody need something like that?
Yeah, variety of reasons. So my main reason, hunting.
Yeah.
Uh, I do some large and small game hunting. Now I do the majority of my big game hunting with a bow.
Okay.
I'm an avid deer hunter.
Hmm.
I'm getting better. I've been at it for a few years now, and there's just more opportunities. Longer
Right.
season with a bow because you got to get closer to the animal, be more undetected, yada yada. But
Right.
if I want to go bear hunting, moose hunting, if I want to go up north for a week and go deer hunting, uh, I want to have a rifle
Sure.
because if I only have a week to hunt, I want to be able to see or kill the deer that I see.
Hmm.
I want to go. You're inside 100 meters. You're standing broadside. You're mine. Versus a bow, I see so many deer that I don't even have a shot at.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you got to get so much closer and all that. Right? So gun much easier hunting
Hmm.
than with a bow. Bear hunting, I wouldn't dream of trying to hunt bear with a bow.
A former
God,
neighbor of mine actually did do that, use a
yeah, the
bow
wife will
and
kill
hunt
you.
bears. Yeah, yeah, that
The wife
it's
will
a
kill
little
you.
bit more nerve wracking for sure because you
Yeah,
don't have
right.
that second shot lined up right away.
Yeah. So, yeah, if I was going bear hunting, I would definitely want to use a gun. And then some people like drawing a bow is hard,
Yeah. Oh
right?
yeah.
Like I've got a compound bow. It's
Yeah.
got like a 70-pound draw, which is overgunned for what I'm going after, but I
Hmm.
like a nice flat trajectory on my arrow.
Yep.
But 70-pound draw on a bow.
Yeah.
I got to work out to be able to do that, right?
I've
Like I got to,
tried like a 50-pound draw, 60-pound draw, something like that before, and like I'm a strong guy for my size, but wow, that was like my chest muscles were just busting.
yeah, right? So it takes work and a lot of people don't have that. Like when I'm 50, I don't want to have to still be able to do chin-ups.
Right,
Like
right.
time out for switching to gun, right?
Right,
Like
right.
it's
That
just
makes sense.
someone with like a physical disability gonna have a harder time with archery.
Hmm.
Let them hunt with a gun,
For
right?
sure, for sure.
Someone who is new to hunting, it's hard to get into something when you have no success. You will be more successful using a gun than with a bow.
It's
So
true.
I recommend to people who want to get into it, get yourself a 22 caliber, like
Hmm.
small caliber rifle,
Hmm.
and you
Tiny
can
little
take down pretty
bullets.
much all small game with that. Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's dirt cheap. It's like 10 cents a bullet, so you can shoot all day and learn good shooting
Yep.
fundamentals, and it'll take down rabbits and squirrels and stuff cleanly.
I've gone
And then get
target
a
shooting
12
with a
gauge.
22, and like
Yeah,
it's legitimately fun. Like I enjoyed shooting the little rifle. Is just like a little bolt action rifle, just a tiny thing, and like it's very accessible. At that
yeah,
time, I
it's
was
no recoil,
yeah,
very little noise,
yeah,
and you go buy a box of 100 rounds of ammo for like $10, and it lasts you an afternoon.
yeah,
It's awesome,
yeah,
right?
yeah. It's
So,
pretty cool.
and then you pair that with a 12 gauge shotgun, and
Hmm.
you can hunt anything in Ontario,
Makes
right? So
sense.
you can
Yeah.
use slugs for bear or deer. You can put in buckshot. You can go upland game hunting with just like shot pellets, um, and you can do like waterfowl and stuff,
Hmm.
right? So hunting is a big one, especially up north. A lot of people own guns for subsistence hunting.
Yes.
Uh, Next one is like sport shooting.
Yeah.
Just like you might enjoy darts, pool, golf, curling,
Hmm.
right? It's a skill based sport,
Hmm.
and there's different disciplines.
Fun thing to
Firing
do.
a handgun, yeah, and firing a handgun is way different from firing a rifle,
Hmm.
which is way different from firing a shotgun at a moving target, which is
Hmm.
way different. Like big difference between like plinking with a rifle and like long range precision, yeah, long range, very accurate shooting,
Close
right?
enough.
So, uh, yeah, some people like doing like IPSC, competitive handgun shooting, where
Hmm.
you do a timed course where
Hmm.
you are graded on both your accuracy and your speed, and you are trying to hit a succession of targets while moving.
Hmm.
Some people really like sitting down at a bench, resting their rifle on sandbags, and taking their time to try and make two bullet holes touch on the paper at 300 meters away.
Yeah.
And it is really rewarding when you do that. I hand load rifle cartridges, partly for cost saving. Like this is 45.70.
Hmm.
You can buy them for like $4 a piece or make them yourself for 250 a piece.
Wow.
Your call,
Yeah.
right? So people will hand load ammunition where you take the spent brass casing, put a new primer in it, recharge it with gunpowder, seed a new projectile on it, and they will like fine tune the powder charge, the primer that they want, the seeding depth of the bullet to like make it as accurate as possible for their
Wow.
rifle.
Wow.
And then there's people who love shooting clays, sporting clays, like skeet and trap. You fire a clay frisbee through a handheld thing or a machine, and it simulates like bird hunting.
Yeah,
It's how
I've done
you
that before,
practice
and
for.
it's incredibly fun. Like had a
It's a
shotgun and
blast,
just like wow, I actually hit the thing. That's amazing.
and it feels so good when you hit one like squarely,
Oh
where
yeah,
it just
yeah. Just shatters away
atomizes.
and like holy
Yeah, it
crap.
just turns into dust. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's awesome. It's a ton of fun, right?
yeah,
So that makes up the vast
mm,
majority of shooting
yeah.
in this country. Now, there
And
are some people who own guns for like self defense. So
yes,
if I lived in a cottage up in bear country,
yeah,
I would want a rifle in my house
for
because if
sure.
a black bear mauls my dog,
You
it's
just never
personal,
know. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Or if a bear tries to break into my house, I want that. If you come through that window, buddy, you're in trouble,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
There's some people who live in like remote areas where
Mm-hmm.
police aren't accessible, or people who live in communities where they know police aren't around for them,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
who feel more safe with a firearm in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't begrudge them that.
Yeah.
Uh, and anyone here ever had a stalker? What did the
It's a little
police say?
scary. Yeah, yeah.
Let us
Call us
know
when
if
you've
you feel
dead. Yeah,
yeah.
it's just not working. It's
I
not.
I understand the sentiment of feeling more comfortable with a firearm in the house,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, for sure. Now, mind you, I would never myself, but
Mhm.
like I can understand situations wherein the police are obviously not going to be able to help you in your hour of need, and or
Mhm.
the police are actually a danger to you in the case of like racialized
Yeah.
peoples.
There
Yeah.
is a long history of the state just failing to protect populations, right?
Yeah.
If you look at things like the Tulsa Race Massacre
Hmm.
and just like so many events where like lynchings,
Yep.
like
Yep.
just straight up members of the community extrajudicially killing another member of the community. I cannot begrudge a racialized Canadian for feeling a little bit more comfortable with a 12 gauge in their bedroom.
For sure. For sure.
I feel for you, right? Like I am a 6'3", 230-pound man who practices boxing for fitness.
Yeah.
I can bench 250. Not a lot of stuff scares me. I understand that other people are a lot more vulnerable than me.
Yes.
A lot more people don't live in as quiet a neighborhood as me, don't have the same access to resources, don't have a German Shepherd in their house. I get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it.
Yeah.
People living in really remote areas, like you live up in Kenora,
Hmm.
you are waiting 45 minutes for police
Yep.
traveling at 130 kilometers per hour in some
Yeah.
places.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it be.
And of course, even the
I
folks
get
that do choose to defend themselves that way, they're hoping, they're praying never to have to actually like fire the damn thing. If anything,
yeah,
just
like and
having
there's
it.
no castle law in Canada.
No,
Like you
no, no,
gotta
no.
justify
Yeah,
doing that, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah. And just
and I
for
don't like
those that don't know, the castle law is basically that you are entitled in some U.S. states to defend your property using weaponry, uh, basically without any actual need for physical threat to yourself. You're able to just
yeah,
like stand your
you got a
ground.
duty to retreat here.
Yeah.
You got a duty to like call the police first, make sure the door is locked,
Hmm.
tell them to fuck off,
Yeah.
tell them I got a rifle, I
Yeah.
will shoot you if you keep trying to break down this door, right?
Yeah.
And I don't like things like stand your ground laws like in the states, right? Because like one, they don't get applied fairly,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
we got George Zimmerman, big fucking pussy,
Yeah.
picks a fight with a 17-year-old, starts getting his ass kicked, fears for his life as he rightly should, and gets away with murder.
Yeah.
And the 17-year-old gets referred to as a
Hmm.
thug in some circles, while George Zimmerman goes on to get multiple arrests for domestic violence and
Hmm.
being a general shithead.
And is still
No
called by some as a hero and
a hero.
celebrated
Well,
and
he's that John McClane
right, right.
defended the neighborhood from
He's
someone who don't belong here character
right,
that white middle class Americans fantasize about being.
right.
And then in the same state, you have a woman who had a restraining order against an ex-husband who had threatened to kill her, explicitly said, I will kill you. He showed up at her house. She fired a shot into the ceiling because it's hard to kill someone.
Yeah.
It's not, it's, I've seen lots of people die.
Yeah.
It's very unpleasant. A
Yes.
lot of people don't have it in them to harm another person like
Yeah.
that. So she fires a warning shot into the ceiling. She's in prison now for reckless endangerment. And that's something I tell people, right? Because people go, "Hey, you're a gun guy, Andrew. What if someone's like breaking into your house? Do you like fire a warning shot over their head?" Or what? I'm like, a warning shot where? Into my neighbor's house? Across the street?
Yeah.
Into a dog? Like a warning shot into what?
Yeah. Yeah.
Into I don't have a pile of sandbags to fire a warning shot into. Like
Yeah.
there is no warning shot. If you have time for a warning shot, you have time to tell them to fuck off.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
there's a level of responsibility that comes with it that isn't just
Yeah.
have guns solve problem.
And the trouble is that very few people, and in very few cases, do you have any practice, any experience in the situation when you are then confronted with somebody who's out to get you, somebody who is legitimately hostile towards you. It's very difficult to actually have a practiced response to that when you've never had that experience before.
Yeah, and it's like a martial art, right? Like you need to develop muscle memory. You need to
Yes.
go through the motions. Like I'm a paramedic. I
Mm-hmm.
went through 2 years of school where we drilled skills a
Yes.
lot.
Yeah.
Where when you got someone who's in a cardiac arrest, you go through the motions of all the things that you need to do
Mm-hmm.
because it is a flurry of activity and there's so much stuff you need to cover. And it's at the point now, I'm several years into my career where it's kind of automatic.
Yeah.
It almost gets boring because we come in and we do the thing
Yeah.
and then we start working them and it's just like eerily calm because like the muscle memory took over.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to think about putting the pads on. I don't have to think about cutting the shirt off. I don't have to think about getting someone to start doing compressions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to think, I delegate someone to doing airway management and they don't have to think about it all that much because we've done it so much and we've
Mm-hmm.
practiced it and it just happens.
Mm-hmm.
Versus I've read about this once and when I'm crapping my pants in the moment, I'll be able to do it perfectly. Right.
Right. Right. Yeah. That
Again,
doesn't
that's
work.
that's another people imagine the firearms community as being like this monolithic white Christian male
Mm-hmm.
group, but it's not. And there is there's tension between people who are like, yo, if you got a gun and you got it for self-defense or anything like that, like you need to take it seriously. You need to practice. You need to practice not just like drawing your weapon, aiming it properly, not pointing it at yourself throughout this process.
Don't
You know,
shoot yourself in the nuts.
yeah, yeah. That seriously, like there's a lot of talk and discussion that goes into like proper holsters.
Mm-hmm.
If it looks cool, don't fucking buy it.
Right. Right.
It's stupid.
It's not
There's
there
a
to look cool. It's there to be safe.
there's a type of holster that is like a running joke in the community because um, it's got like a button on the side. It locks your gun in place, and you use your index finger to press a button to draw the gun.
That
Like
sounds
you're not.
terrible.
Yeah, it's for shooting yourself in the leg, is what it
Yeah.
is.
Great. Good.
Because in the moment, you shoot yourself in the leg. You are fumbling around to pull out your gun,
Mm-hmm.
and that repetitive motion of your finger trying to find the button, just you blast yourself in the thigh. And it's like you can go through so many, like you can go through Google and just find so many news stories of so and so shot in leg after misfire, yada yada yada. It's just so there's people who take this stuff seriously. They go,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you got to wear a proper holster. Don't use a leather holster. They wear out. Your gun will not sit properly. It will not properly guard the trigger. Hey, if you're in the States and you're like concealed carrying a weapon, you constantly need to be aware of the status of that weapon. Is there a round in the chamber? Is the safety on?
Mm-hmm.
What is the position of that weapon? If you take it off and like put it down somewhere, do you have an eye on it? Where is it? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you got to take it seriously. If you are planning to defend yourself with a firearm, you got to practice, just like hunting. I don't just buy a rifle and go, oh yeah, this is great. We're going bear hunting tomorrow.
Yeah, no.
No,
that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, so I took this to the range. I had some hand loads that I made for it, and I got it sighted in, and I wrote down exactly how much powder and what primers I used for those hand loads and what projectile I have, so I know it's zeroed for those.
Mm-hmm.
And if I want to go bear hunting, because I haven't shot this for a few months, and I want to bring this, I'm going to go to the range, and I'm going to make sure that it's still zeroed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to practice with it. I'm going to practice loading it. I'm going to practice unloading it, because at the end of the day, if I don't use it, I got to get all those shells out of there in the dark with cold hands while I'm walking back to my cabin.
Yeah.
You don't just pick it up and go. Just like it's not like an automobile where once you know how to drive one, you know how to drive all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need to get practice. You need to figure it out.
Yeah. So let's address something that one of the arguments that very strongly influenced me when I was dead set against the idea of guns in general was the statistic that people who own guns for self defense, particularly handguns, it's most likely to end up in one of your family members rather than anybody who is an attacker. How do we address this? How do we confront this idea?
That is another conversation that happens in the firearms community a lot.
Mm-hmm.
There's a concept called FUD. Is a well, it's an Elmer FUD. It's
Ah.
someone who doesn't think a lot about their guns. Uh, it has kind of fetishizes older stuff. Mostly just has it. It's the old guy who's got 270 that he just brings out for deer season every year. He fires it twice, once to make sure it's still zeroed, and once for the deer.
Right.
And he's full of something called FUD lore,
Oh, yes.
which is gun mythology,
Right.
right? So 9 millimeters got no stopping power. I only carry 45 ACP. Well, statistically, they're the same. I only carry 45 ACP. They're full of awesome advice like, well, you got a shotgun loaded for home defense, but make sure the first shot is bird shot because if it's one of your family members, you don't want to kill them. Wrong on so many levels.
So
If you
wrong.
don't know what you're pointing your gun at, you shouldn't be pointing your gun at it.
Right, right.
Planning to kill it, you shouldn't be pulling the
It's
trigger.
the last option
You
rather than
shouldn't.
the first one.
Yeah, and yeah, birdshot typically doesn't have stopping power. I've seen videos of people getting shot with birdshot and just being like, oh, what the fuck was that?
Ow.
Yeah, like it stings,
Yeah.
right? Like it'll mess you up. Ask Dick Cheney's friend.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
But yeah, okay. So your plan, you need this weapon for self-defense because you are urgently in danger. But you've got enough time to shoot someone twice, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, if you own a firearm, you have a responsibility to use it responsibly. So part of that, like knowing how to use it and being practiced in using it, is like practicing good situational awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Does your pistol have a light on it? If no, it is not your home defense
Right.
pistol,
Right.
right?
Because
You
you're doing
do
this in the
not grab
dark.
that.
You
Yeah,
don't know who
again,
it is.
talking like Americans, you don't grab that out of your nightside table if you hear a bump in the night if you can't see what you're pointing it at,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
These are like valid concerns because there are responsibilities. Just like I have concerns about drunk driving and speeding, because I see so many more people killed by automobiles than I do
Yes.
guns,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
So yeah, these are community issues. These are cultural issues. I don't know if legislation is the answer to those problems.
Legislation can certainly help, like the legislation that provides already the restrictions that we have in Canada that limits the number of prohibited weapons, that limits the the freedom with which one can use a restricted or prohibited weapon.
Yeah.
But when the legislation starts to nitpick, when it starts to like get into the nitty gritty of one's personal liberties, too specifically, then it starts just being an impediment for people who are willing and able to follow the rules and be responsible. But it doesn't
Yeah,
actually solve any problems.
and like the distinction between like non-restricted and restricted long guns is like so arbitrary. So like I said, I had a Ruger Mini 14 223 rifle, semi-automatic, 5-round magazine. All right. Now prohibited, previously restricted AR-15, semi-automatic, 223, 5-round magazine.
Yep.
What's the difference?
Pretty arbitrary.
One of them look here.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not really interested in having an AR-15. I had something that kind of looked similar because it was not caught up in the firearm ban and functionally similar to the Mini 14. And I have just like so much 223 sitting around and all the stuff for reloading it. So I'm like, well, I'm not just going to not shoot 223. So yeah, so I got like a made in Canada AR-like weapon, and I took it to the range and zeroed it in with an optic, and I didn't really like it. I actually traded it away, but I thought to myself, I can't go hunting with this. Anyone who sees this has no idea what the difference between this and an AR-15 is,
Right.
and 50% chance the OPP guy who rolls up to check out this complaint also doesn't know,
Right.
and we end up in
And
a
it ends
in
up
a
in a
lot of trouble.
standoff, and
Yeah, I don't feel like being cuffed in the back of a cruiser while he checks a serial number and goes, "Oh,
oh, never
hold on,
mind. This just
fucked
looked
up."
scary, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just right off the hop, I was like, let's avoid this whole
Mm-hmm.
situation from ever having to happen.
Very
Right?
prudent.
Layers of safety.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing. It's why didn't it get caught up in the ban?
Mm-hmm.
It's apparently a ban on military style weapons. They banned a whole bunch of ARs that are not used by any military. No official state military is using most of these sporting rifles because they're not set up for fighting. They're set up for hunting and sport shooting. Um, but you can still buy a Tavor, the main battle rifle of the Israeli military.
Oh. Oh, good.
Yeah, or a Type 97, the main battle rifle of the Chinese military.
Oh. Oh, just great. Just great.
But somehow just missed that. And I think part of it is not wanting to wreck trade relations
Mm-hmm.
some situations. And also part of it is like some of Justin Trudeau's buddies like guns. Come on.
Yeah.
Someone who gives him money for his campaigns likes guns. Some of his business associates like guns.
Yeah.
But those are expensive guns.
Oh, yes, yes.
So it's
Those
not a
are
problem.
high-class guns. So
We're taking
it's
away
fine.
guns that the working class can access.
Right.
But it took me forever to find one of these. This is the Benelli MR1. Non-restricted.
Mm-hmm.
Say it with me, Eric. 223.
223.
Semi-automatic.
Semi-automatic.
5-round magazine.
5-round magazine. Same shit.
It can take
Different
It
form.
can take the same magazine as an AR-15,
Mm-hmm.
but this is $2,200 versus $1,200.
Ah.
So
Expensive, but basically the same
So
thing.
there's a few expensive toys left over, but it's
Mhm.
basically the same thing,
Hmm.
right? And that's another thing, right? Like I saw that they are going to create offenses for modifying magazine capacity. So for my dearly departed Ruger Mini 14, this is the 5-round magazine that came with it.
Mm-hmm.
Not super ergonomic when you've got gloves on. You need it rests flush with the bottom of the rifle,
Right.
so you really got to finger bang it in there, and you got to rock it in on a particular angle. So this is a 20-round Ruger Mini 14 magazine,
Sticks
ordered
out.
from the States,
You can pull it in.
so that I can hold it. Yeah. You want to know the difference between good and evil, bud? It's aluminum rivet.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that'll do it.
Before it's allowed to cross the border, you drill a hole and you pop a rivet in so that it can't the plate here can't descend past a point where it would hold 5 rounds,
Mm-hmm.
and everything's hunky-dory.
Suddenly it's a 5-round magazine, even though it looks like a 21.
Yeah, and then there's a bunch of people who go, well, ban that, because you can just like put a drill press through that rivet and get all the crud out and it'll work. And I'm like, yeah, but you know what else I can do?
But...
I can go buy sheet metal from Home Depot.
Right.
I can get my vise and some channel locks downstairs. I can get some tin snips. I can get a file, and I can get a spring.
Yep.
And I
Lots
can
of ways you
make
can
this.
accomplish this.
Yeah. So what? You're just gonna create a fucking black market for metal boxes? That's another thing. It's kind of hard to regulate a metal box.
Yeah.
Like when all's said and done, like yeah, this was manufactured by Ruger. It's got no serial number, but it's got branding and a logo and all that on it. But what if I just make a metal box with a spring in it?
It's just a box.
I'm allowed to make a metal box with a spring in it, aren't I?
Well, and the more I think about this, the more in common it has with drug regulations, where like we're spending all this effort on restricting people's ability to do something that is kind of a human right, the ability to alter one's own consciousness. But then also like the trade and sale in this consciousness altering thing, which most of the harms of which can be mitigated just by decent personal choices, just by having
if you want to solve drug problems, make it so people don't want drugs.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Yeah. If we weren't living in a society where everyone's trying to anesthetize away all their pain that's accrued from these really crappy conditions, then people will be less likely to want to be
show up to work at the factory with a compressed disc in their back. They're not going to get hooked on opioids and end up going to fentanyl when they can't get their prescription refilled anymore.
That's true. And if you live in a society where people aren't miserable and feeling aggrieved and murderously angry, well, they're probably going to be less likely to try and kill one another with guns.
And another thing they have in common, there are good drugs and there are bad drugs.
There are.
There's there's my tax revenue generating sherry that I was enjoying,
I'll drink to that.
and my tax revenue generating cigars that I got to pay a heavy tariff on. And there is my lucrative business opportunity marijuana that I can now purchase.
Ah, yes, yes, indeed.
Three,
Yep.
right? So there's the good drugs that the government is hunky dory with, and they want to make some money off of. And then there's the bad drugs.
And it's just amazing how quickly a bad drug can become a good drug when suddenly it becomes big business. Like pot has
Right.
gone from enemy number one to huge business. Like our local paper has a specific section in it that's just for weed. And like
Yeah.
that just all of a sudden it's gone from this awful nasty thing that I was always lambasted for advocating for to now something that our former police chief and former head of I forget what the position title is, but Julian Fantino has now he owns a pot producer company. Amazing how quickly that happens after
Yeah.
several decades ago arresting people for doing exactly the same thing that his business now does.
Oh, yeah. I went to a dispensary a little while ago, and I was chatting with one of the owners, and he was selling like paraphernalia,
Hmm.
pipes and one hitters and stuff like that, and grinders and vapes, and he was not allowed to handle the actual sales of cannabis
Hmm.
because he had been caught selling it previously, which means you're not
Right.
allowed to sell it now that it's legal.
So the guy who has experience selling the thing can no longer sell the thing because he has experience selling the thing. Great. Excellent. Good.
Yeah, right. So it's
Bizarre.
whatever makes the masters happy.
Yeah, of course. Well, this has been very enlightening. So thanks very much for your insight on this, Andrew. You're very experienced in these matters, so I appreciate your input. So
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, I do
great chatting
these.
with you, Matt.
Yeah, good chatting with you as well. So I do these videos daily, and so if you like this content or any other content, feel free to like the channel and subscribe to it and all that stuff, and maybe check out one of those videos. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.